Welcome to New Royal House of Pricey Cardboard. Now that Commander Legend is upon us and our wallets, me and Katie channeled once more the mighty power of our printer for some early Precons content. This time, it's actually quite early in comparison to Zendikar, but since I get bored with untouched Precons extremely fast, we added a tweak to this release. Me and Katie were allowed to change 15 cards from the original lists. 15 seems like a fair amount to tweak the number of ramps, lands, and switch some really bad cards. I will be playing Aesi, Tyrant of Gyre Strait. So this is a Tatiova Benthic Druid for 1 more mana but 1 more land drop. I think it's still somewhat on the casual side with a CMC of 6, but the extra land drop made a bigger impact on the game than I expected. In the precon, there is a sub-team of sea creatures to go with Aesi Serpent typing, and I decided to push on this team more than going on the landfall Simic value. You can see on the screen the cards are removed. The original curve of this deck is extremely high, and so removing a couple of late drops made sense. I also dropped the number of lands to 40 as this seemed more than enough to my taste. Peel from reality is just bad, especially considering the curve of the deck where it is included. You don't want to wait 4 or 5 turns to cast your commander and then return it to hand to bounce a creature your opponent controls, right? Here are the cards I added. Not too unreasonable budget-wise, $61. Ashaya is probably the biggest offender, but having each creature cantrip with my commander seemed worth it. If you remove Ashaya, Genesis Wave and the Quest for Ula's Temple, you reduce the cost by half. I added 3 ramps and a Myriad Landscape. How was Myriad not included in this deck? It's crazy. And the rest is Big Fish Synergy. Oh, and a bear, because ramp and Trentpo. On Kelly's side of the drawing board, we have 2 main problems. Not enough ramp and equip cost being way too high. Since Wyleth does not trigger on cast like Shram, you can't rely on cheap equipment to draw you into your auto-equips. Also, since Wyleth already has Trample, stats become a lot more important than keywords in my opinion. Here are the cards that Kelly added. 6 of them want to ramp in some way. We've got some protection, some good stat to CMC ratio, and a fetch. Kelly's choice are a little more expensive with a total of around 100 Canadian dollars, but that's to be expected from colorless ramp and equipments. Remember when Fellwar Stone was $1? I remember. Our opening hand contains Spirit Mantle, Unbreakable Formation, Sword of the Animist, 3 basic planes, and a basic mountain. This feels like a pretty good hand. We have 2 cards to attach to Wyleth early into the game. It will make us draw into our next spells. Wyleth being 3 mana makes it quite difficult to ramp earlier than on curve, sadly. My opening hand contains Factor Fiction, Explore, Blighted Woodland, Reliquary Tower, and 3 basic forests. Very heavy on lands, the Explore is nice to gain some speed. I didn't notice the lack of blue when I kept this hand, but worst case scenario, the Blighted Woodland will fetch me 2 basic islands. Kelly gets to start this match. Land drops a mountain. A land drop, a forest. Kelly land drops a plains and casts Sword of the Animist. I land drop a forest and cast Explore. I draw a card and land drop Reliquary Tower from my hand. Kelly land drops a plains, and cast her commander, Wyleth, Soul of Steel. I land drop a Blighted Woodland, a land I usually really don't like, but it might just save my lack of blue. Kelly land drops a plains, and equips the sword to Wyleth. She then casts Spirit Mantle, enchanting the warrior. She goes into combat and attacks me with Wyleth. Sword in the creature triggers on attack, drawing 2 cards and fetching a basic land to our battlefield. I land drop a forest and crack Blighted Woodland for 2 basic islands. Kelly land drops a mountain and casts Unquestioned Authority. She draws from the enchantment. Heading into combat, she attacks me with Wyleth again, drawing 3 cards this time and ramping again. I land drop a forest and cast my commander, Aesi, Tyrant of Gyre Strait. I then land drop another forest, Aesi triggers, drawing a card. I then pass. Kelly then drops a plains, and casts Angelic Destiny. During combat, but before going to attackers, I cast Simic Charm, returning Wyleth to her hand. In second main, she recasts Wyleth and pass. I cast Calny Heart Expedition. I then land drop a forest. My expedition gets a counter and I draw a card from Aesi. I then land drop Thornwood Falls, getting the same triggers plus a point of life. I cast Tromocrates. and I go to combat. I send Aesi to Kelly for 5. In her main phase, Kelly casts Unbreakable Formation, getting the Addendum. She followed it up with Winds of Wrath. We head into combat and Wyleth swings at me for 3. I start my turn by recasting Aesi. I then land drop an island, triggering my commander in my expedition. After that, I sacrifice the expedition for 2 basic tap to my battlefield. Aesi triggers 2 more times. I then evoke Mulldrifter, drawing 2 and sacrificing the elemental. I finally draw a second land and land drop a forest. Aesi triggers and I end my turn. Kelly equips Sword of the Animus on Wyleth. She then goes into combat and sends Wyleth to me. I block with Aesi. Reacting to blocks, Kelly casts Abrade, targeting my commander. Both creatures trade and I take some trample damage. During my following turn, I cast Genesis Wave, where X equals 11. Kelly reacts with Wild Ricochet. We both reveal our top 11 cards and put all permanents that cost less than 11 on the battlefield. Kelly gets a mountain, 2 plains, Relic Seeker, Hammer of Nazan, Burrow Signet, and a Felwar Stone. I get a forest, an island, a Simic Growth Chamber, Retreat to Kazandu, Seer's Sundial, Verdant Sun's Avatar, Shipbreaker Kraken, and a Meloku the Clouded Mirror. The Hammer ETB resolves first and attaches itself to the Relic Seeker. I then resolve the healing from my dinosaur, seeing all my creatures entering. I gain 15. I then return a basic forest to hand for my bounce land, and put 2+1/+1 counters on my Meloku, thinking I only got 2 landfall triggers. I do not pay any mana into my Seer's Sundial and empty the stack. I then cast Coiling Oracle. I reveal Coral Atoll. I put it on the battlefield, but since I have no untapped land to return to my hand, it sacrificed itself. These old bounce lands, they're just the best. I do however get the landfall triggers and add another counter on my Moonfolk. I also gain a life from my avatar seeing the Oracle. At the end step, Kelly casts Wear and Tear, Fused, destroying my Retreat and my Sundial. Kelly untaps and land drops a plains. She casts Silent Arbiter, which is quite the answer right now. She then casts Tiana, Ship's Caretaker, and recasts Wyleth. After that, she equips Sword of the Animus on the Relic Seeker, and in her combat step, sends the Relic Seeker to me, which I block with my Kraken. The Sword's trigger, fetching a land. I then drop a forest. I activate my Kraken monstrous ability, tapping down all of Kelly's creature. I then cast Acidic Slime, destroying the Arbiter. After that, I cast Gorkla, Terror of Kal Sisma, and follow it up with some Swift Foot Boots that I equip to Gorkla. All of this for exactly the amount of mana I had. I also gain 5 life from my 2 creatures entering the battlefield. I go to combat and attack with my whole board. Gorkla triggers, giving my board +1/+1 and trample. Kelly untaps, draws for turn, casts Return to Dust to exile my boots, and concedes to the Army of the Sea and a single yet terrifying bear. Looking back at this game, the Wild Ricochet play was very sweet. I got more big creatures out of it because of the way the decks are built, but at least I didn't went so far ahead that Kelly could never find an answer. I think this matchup is very rough for Wyleth. Like I said earlier, it's pretty hard to get him before turn 3, and if the Simic deck gets some early ramps, you could see Aesi drop on the same turn or the next, which is very rough to compete with. We played maybe 4 or 5 1v1s, and even with a hand of 6 lands and a Mulldrifter, I managed to close out the game if I drew at least 1 bounce spell or removal to disrupt Wyleth. This illustrates why land ramp is so strong in Commander. When you ramp with artifacts, there's always a chance that a Vandal Blast or a Bane of Progress will bring you back to the Ice Age. There's not really that kind of answers for lands. And before you tell me Armageddon, well, it's not really useful if your deck can't rebuild from it either. Bane of Progress and Vandal Blast do not set back everyone in a way where nobody can play. They set players back in specific ways, and you probably built your deck so that destroying all artifacts and enchantments won't stop you from winning. Maybe one day we'll get a fairer version of balance that focus on lands and not everything else. Until then, Haven Mind Sensor and Ashiok, I guess. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We just reached 400 subscribers, and I want to thank each of you for following us and helping us grow by telling YouTube that our content is interesting enough for you to subscribe. Thank you to the Patreons of this channel, of course, and thank you to everyone who leaves comments, either feedback or sharing highlights. It's all really appreciated. a special thank you for you, Sun Titan 44. See you soon and take care, my friends.